Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the Commerce Marketing Bootcamp. 5 sessions with 30-minute interactive presentations covering a series of acquisition marketing strategies, bringing you the best of email marketing, affiliates, creating CRM personas, and much more over the next couple of hours. Email drives sales. 66% of marketeers have said that they get excellent ROI out of email marketing. And this is why we have partnered with Econsultancy to bring you the best of what is working in the email channel. So we have today Jim Clark, who's going to talk through the latest tendencies and trends from their Econsultancy latest email marketing trend survey. Please give a welcome to Jim.
Testing, can you hear me? Yeah, great. When Sebastian asked me to present, I never anticipated I'd be kicking off the event today, so it's a fantastic honor, so thank you. My name is Jim. I'm Senior Analyst at Econsultancy, and we talk regularly on elements of digital marketing such as email marketing. It's a fantastic channel, and I want to run through some really interesting trends that are going on in the space right now. But firstly, cast your mind back to 1978. It was a pretty pivotal year. I was born, for a start. But also, it was when the first mass email was sent by a man named Gary Thirsk, who is known as the godfather of spam. Now, Gary sent an email out to 400 members of the ARPANET, which is the internet at the time, advertising DEC machines. I've got no idea what they are. You might be able to tell me. Anybody? No? Anyway, he sent out this to 400 members, and it was such a novelty at the time that he made $13 million worth of sales from that one email. While we'd love to get those sort of ROI today from the channel, it remains a crucial ligament, if you will, a crucial channel for marketers to connect to consumers and derive a relationship that goes way beyond the sale. So as part of that, I'm going to be talking to you about sort of 5 key areas today. So relating to what Sebastian touched on, the industry marketing census we did on email. I'm going to be relating how email continues to drive great ROI. As you're aware, email inboxes are increasingly cluttered, and I'm going to talk about how canny marketers are using design to differentiate, engage, and connect to consumers. And as part of that, I'll also be talking to you about the interactive elements of email that marketers are certainly refining, and how it's increasingly making email 3-dimensional and also quite exciting too. Personalization is also key, and I think that the technology now exists to create one-to-one email marketing much more readily. And finally, the future of email. Where's it all going to go from the next 2 years to the next 20 or 30? Just to sort of set the scene, if you will, I came across this great research from McKinsey early on this year, and they analyzed customer journeys, 20,000 of them in total. And they found from their research that, on average, the touch points on the way to the customer journey are increasing by 20% year on year. And this is a challenge for marketers, because the more potential touch points there are, the greater chance there are objections along the way, and for the consumer to drop out of the journey. And this is partly due to the challenges that marketers face. There's more investment in the area. Consumers are seeing more marketing communications. And they also own more devices than ever as well. So McKinsey calls this a digitally jaded generation of consumers who are harder to influence by brand messaging online. So, you know, this is some of the sort of perspective that marketers are working to in this channel at the moment. But despite the proliferation of devices and channels, email is still the real deal. The DMA did some research last year, and they found that, on average, consumers spend 2.01 hours on email at home. there was a small percentage just spent over 7 hours, which seemed quite extreme. But that actually rate of time spent on email has gone up over the last 4 years. In fact, it's up 15 minutes compared to 2010. Now, I say this because that's significant, because we've seen the rise in things such as instant messenger and social networking. And it's partly due to this proliferation of devices that's sort of supporting email. You know, one of the most popular apps on an internet-enabled device is an email app. And this is offsetting the time spent on the likes of instant messenger platforms and social networks. So perhaps unsurprisingly, when it comes to the return on investment, marketers say that they are getting good to excellent ROI, according to our email marketing industry census. And this is the same stat compared to other channels. And we pitched this in the survey, asking them about sort of things such as SEO, paid search, content marketing, and email marketing came up pretty much to the top. And we looked specifically at companies in this survey sample, but if we had agencies as well, email is level pegging with SEO. Now, there's a lot of trends at play here. I think, especially talking to a lot of clients at round tables, clients are increasingly having challenges keeping up with Google's latest algorithm updates, like Mobilegeddon, as you well know. And also social networking sites asking more money from brands and also limiting the reach of organic posts. So I think as we see more pay-for-play algorithms integrated into the likes of search engines and social networks, email will only go up in the perceptions of ROI going forward. You know, it's a direct connection that you own, and it enables you to build loyalty and a relationship over time. Now, you think that attribution on email should be simple, but it's not as clear-cut as getting an email and click on the link and buying something. I might receive an email from a brand. I might like the look of it, park it for a couple of months, and then forward it to a friend who would then go into a store and buy the good or service. So, you know, it's not so clear-cut, and I think this sort of sums it up quite nicely. It's from Think with Google, the customer journey to online purchase. You can cut it different ways. Let's look specifically at email and shopping. And as you can see here, that, you know, rather than being the first and last, a lot of the time, email sits within the middle. And I think it's challenging to work out the value of email to your sales funnel. I think the only real way is to stop emailing altogether and see what effect that will have. But, you know, you want to make some money. I think from my perspective is you need to have a small sample size and discontinue email there, and then you can work out the true value. Now, this is a particularly fun area, talking about design trends. You know, I think that when it comes to inboxes, they're increasingly crowded. It's hard to get your brand to pop out. So I want to cover some of the sort of latest trends that we've seen at Econsultancy when it comes to email design. But firstly, I want to talk about mobile. The fact is that we are viewing more email on mobile than ever. According to some recent return path trends research, just over 60% of email is now opened up on mobile. And we're, compared to the other main regions around the world, we are above the US, which comes second. So perhaps unsurprisingly, when it comes to email marketing practices, optimizing email for mobile devices is a key practice based on our research from the email marketing industry census. In fact, that particular response has gone up by 144% since we introduced the question 2 years ago. So that means thinking about responsive design, building adaptive landing pages, and also thinking about the mobile path to purchase. Now, here's a good example, a case in point from Bags, etc. I particularly like this case. So Bags, etc., they were finding a lot of purchases were happening on mobile, which was a challenge for them because they didn't have a mobile template. So what you can see here is sort of elements of a before and after. You can see it's quite busy on the left. That was before. So what they did was they increased the font size, made the product the hero, got rid of text that wasn't necessary, and made the call to action button much more straightforward and simpler, much bigger. And this, they also did optimized email subject lines as well to make sure it increased the open rates. So what they found was a 1,500% rise in mobile transactions and an 850% rise in mobile revenues off the back of this particular initiative. Now, linked to that was, I particularly like this Oasis example, the warm weather wish list. Well, I wish it was a little bit warmer, actually. It's overcast today, of course, so a lot of these aren't relevant. But I don't know about you, but when I get an email on my mobile phone, I tend to be sort of scrolling. You know, I'm kind of it's in between sort of running for a train or sort of a meeting or something like that, so I'm not really paying too much attention. And so I think a lot of progressive email marketers are actually thinking in terms of that behavior, especially on mobile, given that 62% open it on mobile. And this is obviously quite a long email, so it counts for scrolling. I also like the fact that it's quite easy to click through. If you click on the image, you go straight through to the product page, and you can check out in 2 clicks. And also, if you take note of the fact there's a lot of clear white spacing, I think that's key as well. It sort of gives you the feel and look of a glossy magazine, a sort of a fashion magazine. And I think there's some sort of similarity, I'm trying to go back, similarity between bags, etc. There's a lot of white spacing there. And that trend is certainly something we've seen happen in a lot of brand communication so far this year. Now, I'm not talking particularly about this bright lights as a case study, but it underlines my point about call to action buttons. If you look before, I'm struggling with this. So if you look before, there aren't any buttons at all. It's all integrated with the image. And that's partly a trend that we've seen. It's a reduction in call-to-action buttons. I do think they're crucial, especially on mobile. When you're scanning things quite quickly, a button is quite clear, concise, gives you that next step that you don't have to think about it. I also think from a generational perspective, there are people that have grown up with buttons. I certainly have. So if you can take them away, you think, well, where do I click? But I think that it's certainly at odds with trends that we've seen, and I think obviously you need to use buttons, but use them strategically, of course, and depending on your overall email objective. Now, this is quite a sort of significant thing, the end of video. Now, up until recently, iOS supported video in email, and recently it broke, which is very unlike Apple. And this is something supported by a lot of research that we've seen, including trends research from eBay itself. eBay analyzed different email platforms, clients, operating systems, and found in the majority of cases, video just didn't transmit. Instead, it was just a static image, and obviously that didn't work. I think the only option there is that you need to have a link to the video underneath the image, which isn't ideal if that's not your call to action. You know, I think video is really good in many respects. It can be quite good for complex things, product launches, for example. But when it comes to the confidence we have in video from an eBay and an Econsultancy perspective, it's not something we can recommend right now. So with the absence of video, it seems to be a bit of a return to sort of back to the future. We're now using GIFs much more readily in place of video. And I think, you know, GIFs work, you know, in the majority of cases, they do work with most email clients, with the exception of Outlook, where you see the first frame only. But they do a really good job. I mean, if you look at this particular Mr. Porter example, it just sort of communicates a mood or sort of a sense of atmosphere that wouldn't be possible using a text. It just makes you want to sort of sit down and have a nice glass of brandy, although it's a little bit early right now. And if you go back to the trend I was talking to you about earlier with the clear spacing, obviously using GIFs in this way, you can reduce the amount of text. It wouldn't be possible to communicate it concisely otherwise. So it sort of fits that white spacing strategy I discussed earlier. This one is a particularly powerful one from Costa. It was on their newsletter last year. It had an open rate of 44%. And I think when it comes to food and drink, animated GIFs can be powerfully enticing. This just makes me want to have another sip of coffee right now, personally. So I ran a session on email. We run sessions on different channels all the time at Econsultancy, and I ran one on email. And clients came up to me after and said, Jim, I think these sort of email is great for ROI, of course, we understand that, but it's a little bit boring and a little bit flat. Hopefully I've sort of communicated the fact it's not boring and it's a little bit more three-dimensional. And there's lots more I'm going to be talking about now in terms of interactivity of email. And I think interactivity is important because, consumers in general want to be involved as much as possible with what they see online. So this is a really great example from Yahoo Travel. If you're thinking about your holidays now, obviously there's a vote here, which is Hawaii or Tahiti, which is a true Polynesian paradise. So what you can't see here, because it's an image, is the fact that it's a voting system within an email with animated GIFs. Now, what you would also see, if you can see from the small text, it's live results. So you can vote within the email and see the live results. And this is significant because it's a little bit more engaging, for one, but also because it could be handled entirely within email. It could be handled entirely by the email marketing team, so it didn't need outside developer support, which meant the email marketing team could turn this around much more quickly and readily. I like this one from Bonobos. It's a fashion retailer. Now, they took the view that in the majority of cases, when you're looking at a retailer email, you're going to be at work with your boss looking. So you've got the option here. You can click Get the Spreadsheet, or I don't do spreadsheets. So if you click Get the Spreadsheet, you get this nice-looking Excel spreadsheet pop up. If you don't do spreadsheets, it goes to a website. Now, this is quite clever. It looks like looks like an Excel spreadsheet, but it isn't. It's like a web page that pops up. And I think that's quite fun as well. It's a good sense of humor. What you can do is you can fill out certain elements to it, sort of your fashion style. And if you put in your sort of size of your neck, it compares you to different animals as well. And also within the comments fields, you can get discount codes. Now, what this is actually, it's actually a very clever algorithm at play as well. So if you fill in all the details, it gives you actual product recommendations at the end of it. And you can click through when the boss isn't looking to actually check them out and buy. But also what I think, obviously it's not an Excel spreadsheet, so it's a great information collection device as well. So obviously Bonobos can use that going forward and learn a bit more about their target so they can send more relevant email marketing communications going forward. Now, linked to that, this is another a good example from Size. Now, Size recently ran a sale campaign, and this is only, again, it's a long email. But you can see here there's you can click buttons depending on your fashion style, the size of your foot. And when you click on the Go button, it takes you to the area in the sales site with the relevant products that are available. Now, I like this because I'm a bit of a sort of, I like my bargains, and it's nothing more frustrating than when you go to a sales site and the things have sold out. So this can reduce that frustration. So there's a clear benefit for me taking part in this email campaign. And obviously, this is sending data to the Size team to send future emails going forward. I think this works better than simply asking somebody what their, say, fashion style is. They're less likely to want to engage with you. So this is, I think, personalization. I think, obviously, personalization is key. Hopefully, you don't insult your customer in that way, but it does serve a point. Personalization is key. Obviously, you want to build up a relationship with your customer that goes beyond the sale. And I think traditionally, obviously, building up this understanding of the profile of your customer has taken time. Let's say I'm a brand and somebody signs up for an email newsletter. I've got their name, an email address. So if I'm a progressive brand, what I'd do is I'd send a welcome email and ask for a bit more information. And over time, I'd build up trust. I'd do things such as the Vote with Yahoo initiative, for example. But I think increasingly, when it comes to understanding the customer, you can do much more with the technology that's available now to understand who your customer is with very little information to start with. Now, it goes without saying that we as marketers want to do better personalization. Just over nearly 65% of marketers wanted to do that, according to our recent email marketing industry census. And I think when it comes to the sort of level of technology there, we've been talking about one-to-one email marketing, forever since I got into the space. And I think that with the technology that's available, we can do this much more readily, and hopefully show you some case studies now to illustrate the point. Now, this is a good one from eBay Enterprise, actually. Now, I'm a big fan of, as you probably imagine, I'm a bit of a sort of e-commerce addict, and I like grabbing a bargain. And often I get emails saying, these are the most popular things that have sold online today, assuming that it would be relevant for me as well. Or it might be an email like, people like you have bought this. But increasingly, when it comes to sort of the level of sophistication, brands are able to tie web analytics with email analytics. So let's take this example, for example. Let's take this one here. Say I'm Valerie. Now, I have been looking, I put a few pounds on recently. I'm looking at cross trainers. Now, I might look at this 2 or 3 times during the month, and I might abandon maybe a cart. I'll just check out the price, and the delivery doesn't work for me. So what would happen is, after sort of a couple of weeks later, I'll get an email saying, hi, Valerie, we see you've been looking at cross trainers. And, sorry you dropped out, but here's a 10% discount to get you to encourage you to go back and buy. And it's a similar principle from Shop Direct as well with the television. And both of these 2 case studies had above average open rates off the back of that. Now, I particularly like this one. We run a report each year called The Digitals with top case studies across different channels. And this one, particularly for email, was for Liverpool Victoria, using automation based on life cycle. Now, what would happen is if you dropped out from the journey, you would get within 24 hours an email asking you to come back in. 3 days later, if you hadn't checked back in with the site, you'd get a retrieve your quote, essentially. If you were to actually buy from Liverpool Victoria, what it would also do is it would use your profile and generate other relevant offers for you within the welcome email. And this did great guns. It did a direct-to-email conversion rate of 10%, and overall, for every £1 spent by Liverpool Victoria, they made £198 in return. So pretty good there. Now, I particularly like this one from British Gas because obviously I'm into digital marketing. I'm a bit of a geek, and I recently got a smart meter. So I'm logging in all the time, checking out what my energy consumption is, how much I can save. I'm a bit of a Scotsman as well. I'm half Scottish. So this one, not everybody is into their smart meters as much as me. And what British Gas wanted to do was they wanted to encourage people to log on to the smart meter portal and just get an understanding of how they use their energy. And I like this one. What they did was they actually put live data from people's smart meter into the email to encourage them to just get a face look at what they use, to encourage them to log in. And obviously from this we saw an uplift of open rates of 53%, and unsubscribe rates were reduced by 58%. So a really good case study there. But responsive design for device is great, but we also need to think about responsive design for context as well. So say I am looking at my email on a mobile device, I'm scanning, but it's very different from when I'm looking at email at home on my laptop, I'm snacking. I think what, as marketers, we need to take into account the context, time of day, behavior. It could even be geolocation, of course, using signals such as location. If you're near a store and you're on the mailing list, you get an email with an update or relevant offer to encourage you to go in. And I think when it comes to designing for a good user journey, the technology is in place now to enable brands to be able to do this much more readily. I think real-time content is going to be a big trend this year, will continue to be a very big trend. So it's taking into account the context, time of day, how people want to be communicated to, and when they want to be communicated to. And this one from Nectar is a good one. now next to wanting to encourage people to go into their email and explore how many loyalty points that they have and where they could spend their points. And this one would vary by location. So depending on where you were, you get sort of options to spend your points in nearby venues. It was also weather specific as well, very clever. So if it was raining, the venues that were suggested were obviously places that you could shelter from the rain, like a cinema, a restaurant, and vice versa. And obviously it had very, very above average open rates or click-through rates off the back of that. Now this one from Shop Direct, there's nothing more frustrating, again, like I said to you earlier, when you click through, the sale item's not there. So what they did with this particular campaign is each hour, that email would update with a new offer. This particular Black Friday deal had time-specific deals that lasted for 60 minutes. So that encouraged people to click through, and it kept the email live and relevant based on what was happening on the site in that particular moment. Now, given that email is, the mobile channel is so important, we asked marketers what their strategy for email over mobile was based on our census. And unfortunately, a significant proportion of marketers say it's non-existent to not very good at all. So we wanted to explore a little bit more as to why. So we analysed the verbatims. And a lot of it comes down to time and resources. You know, a lot of the time when we spoke to marketers, they say, hey, Jim, you know, I'm just one guy, I'm looking after the entire Europe. I just don't have time to think about it. You know, we've got this old-fashioned way of doing things. It's very hard for me to get them to think about responsive design. So these are some of the common sort of problems that we see coming to us from clients. But I think it's also got something to do with the amount of budgets that are available for marketers to sort of experiment with email. Based on our recent research, we found that the amount of marketing budget overall attributed to email has been in decline. 13% was spent on email this year compared to 19% the previous year. I think a lot of the time, when it comes to email, it's seen as part of the furniture. It delivers great ROI, so there's less incentive to really invest and create new, really interesting strategies over the channel. Now, I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to go straight to this next one. Now, when it comes to sort of trends going forward, I think you may have seen this B&Q, particular case study from B&Q. Everybody got very excited about it last year. I think when it comes to email experimentation, we're moving obviously from static emails to emails that look like sort of mailable microsites, if you will. Obviously, you know, with potential to spend much more time on the channel. And I think another trend that we've seen as well is the fact that, I don't know if any of you have heard of Pony Express. It's not a new form of, not an email account, or it's not a new form of postal service. It's actually an initiative from Google to allow for in-payment system within Gmail. So combine the two, we're looking at much more time spent in email, and potentially for email to be the first and the last click. So much increasing that sort of proportion for the beginning and the end. And I think there's a lot of trends here that it could potentially support. I think Google are especially seeing that it could be quite valuable for its Play Store. For example, it can sell low-value items like films or apps. I think it could potentially be very good for Amazon one-click payments as well. So I'm very excited about this. I think there's a lot of opportunity from this trend going forward. And finally, you know, where would I be without mentioning the Apple Watch? I mean, I'm sure this is going to be mentioned a lot over the next couple of hours. Now, there's a lot of debates. It's a debate for another session, perhaps, about where it fits with overall email strategy. It's a much smaller screen real estate. You know, there's only so much you can do. But the general agreement is that it's going to provide a lot more signals for marketers going forwards. We've already got quite a few, but this is going to take it to the next level, especially with future iterations of the Apple Watch, which will have more sensors in place. Let's take the launch app for Starwood's guest resorts. It can allow you to check in, bypass check-in, open your hotel room door, and even buy from the minibar. It's quite dangerous, I think. What this could do is it could be a good sensor. If you open your door, an email could trigger. It could say, look, Jim, you've got a certain number of loyalty points you could use for maybe a dinner downstairs in the restaurant. I think from another perspective, it could be quite useful in retail as well. Discount codes within email could be tapped and they could show up in your watch face. and also introduce perhaps a sense of urgency, taking advantage of the Apple clock. It could be a sort of offer which would be counting down, encourage you to rush in there and buy the good or service quickly. So that's my last slide. I think, wow, I'm perfectly on time. Thank you very much. It's been really great.